Carousel posts are an exceptional tool in brand marketing, offering a dynamic and engaging way to present more information while maintaining a strong visual presence. With carousel posts, you can guide your followers through a story, sharing key moments and visuals in a sequence that builds interest. This format is perfect for delivering more comprehensive information without overwhelming your audience, ensuring each slide has a clear, impactful message. By combining imagery and information content, carousel posts are an effective way to drive engagement and leave a lasting impression on your audience. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can harness the power of InDesign to create seamless carousel posts quick and easy and export them super fast to upload to social media platforms with no fuss. We'll cover setting up your document, adding text, images, and even add some design flair. So here I am in InDesign, and here are some carousel posts we are going to develop in this video. This design is part of a series of branded marketing we'll be creating on this course for a fictional design exhibition event. To create carousel posts in InDesign, we're going to cover the following key steps. This is a methodical process that will ensure we create quality design in InDesign and not leave anything unchecked. So be sure to check the bookmarks in this video so you can jump back or ahead at any time. After this video, you'll be able to create carousel posts very easily. So let's get into it. So unlike the static social media posts that will only include one frame, the carousel social media post will always include multiple frames and can be between 2 to 10 frames, depending on which platform you're looking to upload to. The goal of the carousel post is to present a lot more visual information than the static post over multiple frames to tell more of a story or present a larger message. Now, as of making this video, there are a wide range of post dimensions for various social media platforms. Some are square, some are landscape, and some are portrait. Here is a document example of some carousel social media posts for Instagram, set to a canvas size of 1080 by 1350. When creating carousel social media posts in InDesign, it's common to work like this, where you may focus on a few carousel post designs in one document. InDesign offers the perfect workflow environment to work on multiple posts in one document, which can make it easy to manage all the visual elements across a campaign. And when you have everything set up, it's really easy to edit, duplicate, and export them off in seconds. For this project, we're creating some carousel social media posts for a fictional design expo. For the look and feel, we're going to take reference from the brand media kit that is included as part of this course, where we will be including some of the brand motif, color elements, and photography as part of the designs. We'll also be using some of the design elements we have already developed previously in the course. If you want to take a look at this document and get all the assets to follow along, you can get access to this document from the course download folder. This download folder comes with multiple projects and a ton of assets and resources we will be using in this course. You can find the link to acquire the folder from the description. With the download folder open, click into folder 4 project, into the design expo folder, click into folder 2 event publication design, and open the event design InDesign file. This is a document that contains all the publication designs we will be creating on this course. If we scroll down to the marketing collateral page, we can see a variety of documents. For this video, we are going to look at the carousel social media document. So with the selection tool, I'll select the carousel social media thumbnail. Now I'll either come to the links panel and click edit original, or I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and double click on the worksheet thumbnail, and the document will open up in its own tab. Now for this document, I'm using the font Base New. If you have not already downloaded all the fonts for this course, this is a free font that you can acquire online. To get this font, I would recommend you check out the course fonts page on the course PDF document. This is a list of all the fonts that are used on this course and where to get them. Simply click on the Base New link, and this will take you straight to where you can download it. Close this document, install the fonts, open it back up again, and you should be able to follow along just fine. So in this document, I have 4 carousel social media posts. And for each example, I have looked at the carousel post across 4 frames. Each post here consists of 4 separate pages seamlessly placed together, so the design can be placed across the canvas and then exported out as individual frames to upload to social platforms. These carousel posts would work perfectly for Instagram. So if we press W to toggle between preview and normal mode, As simple as this format may initially appear, in normal mode we can see that there is quite a few things going on behind the scenes. To help structure and align my elements, I have used a 2-column grid on each page with a baseline grid which fits inside the margin space around the inside. In this document, I also have a crop layer. As of making this video, the Instagram wall feed on mobile shows images at an aspect ratio of 3:4, whereas the posts themselves need to have an aspect ratio of 4:5. So the first frame of the carousel post on the Instagram wall is slightly cropped in from the side. If you want to design a post to look ideal for the Instagram wall, you will need to account for this crop that currently happens. Here I have a crop margin which I can toggle on and off, so I can design in this space, knowing that if it looks good in this space, it will look good on the Instagram wall. If we look over in the layers panel, we can see 5 layers, one for crop, one for type, one for texture, one for stroke grid, and one for base images. These carousel posts include a lot of visual elements, so the layers have been set up this way to make it easy to organize and manage them. And if we look at the character and paragraph styles panel, we have some styles here formatting our text, and we also have some in the object styles panel. So let's see how we can create a document like this. So to begin, I'm going to come up to File, New, and create a new document. Now when creating a new document in InDesign, you can choose from a range of presets, but for a carousel social media post, it's a bespoke size. Instead of selecting any preset, I'm going to come straight over and type in my own properties. To kick off this document, I'm going to initially set this up to create a 1080 by 1350 carousel post for Instagram. This is a common post dimension for Instagram, which looks great in the feed. So in this instance, we will go with the portrait approach. So I'll set the units to pixels, set the width to 1080 and the height to 1350. I don't want facing pages, so I'll make sure this is unchecked. I'll set the pages to 4. For now, I'll set the margin space around the inside to 100 pixels. Click create and my new document will open. So looking back at my previous document, we can see that I have the pages seamlessly next to each other. So even though the carousel post is a seamless canvas, it's actually separated into individual frames, which will make it easier to export them off as individual frames later. Now by default, when creating pages in InDesign, they will always be treated separately and placed under each other. First, I'll need to address them to make sure they sit next to each other. So I'll come over to the Pages panel, click on the top right menu, scroll down, and currently we can see a tick next to Allow Document Pages to Shuffle. I'll click this to remove the tick. Then in the Pages panel, I'll click on my second page and just drag it up next to my first page. When I see a line next to the page, I'll release and that will snap the page next to it. And you'll also see the page will be immediately next to the page in the work area. Next, I'll come to page 3 and just drag it up next to page 2, drag page 4 up next to page 3, and now we have a seamless canvas area of 4. Now if I wanted to create a longer carousel post, I could just keep adding pages by hitting the add button and dragging them up. But in this instance, I just want to go with a 4-page carousel post. So now if I press W to toggle between preview and normal mode, we can see our margin space around the inside of each page. Great. So looking back at my final social media posts, if I press W, I can toggle between normal and preview mode. In normal mode, we can see the grid I have used to structure the content. For this approach, I have a 2-column grid, and I have used a baseline grid which will allow me to align things vertically. So now I'm going to come into my InDesign preferences, click on units and increments, and I'll set this to pixels for horizontal and vertical. If you're following along, I suggest you do the same so you can match what I'll be doing next. So back in my new document, I'll come over to the Pages panel and double click on the parent page. So right now, it's currently only one page. By default, when you set up a document in InDesign, you will also get a parent page with one page. But this can be easily changed by coming over to the parent page in the Pages panel, right click and click on Parent Options. When the menu appears, I'll simply type in 4 at the bottom, click OK, and now my parent page will be turned into a parent spread, which will match my document spread. Keep in mind, if I set up a carousel post for 5 or 10 pages, I would have to adjust the parent page spread to match. Okay, so first I'll come and click just the first parent page. I'll come up to Layer and click Margin and Columns. Right now the document is set to 100 pixel margin around the inside. Here I'm going to click to unlock the link. Set the left and right to 125 pixels. I'll set the columns to 2. set the gutter to 0 and click OK. Next, I'll click on the second page in my parent page spread, press and hold Shift and select the last page to select the last 3. I'll come up to Layout and click Margins and Columns. Right now the document is set with a 100 pixel margin around the inside. For now I won't change this. I'll set the columns to 2 and set the gutter to 0, click OK. And now we have our margins set to the parent page spread, where the first page has a slightly different margin on the left and right than the other pages. Now you may be wondering why I've set it up like this, but don't worry, you'll see why shortly. So next I'll click on the first page in the parent page spread, press and hold Shift and select the last page to select them all. I'll come back up to Layout, scroll down and click Create Guides. In the menu, I'll make sure to click to turn on Preview. For rows, I'll set the number to 40, and for gutter, I'll set this to 0. I'll make sure to hit the check mark for Fit Gutters to Margins. I'll click OK, and if I double click on a page in the Pages panel, the grid will be applied to the parent page spread. Nice. So once I have my document set up, I can now start thinking about working with visual elements. But before that, I will want to set up a crop margin. So as of making this video, the Instagram grid wall on mobile currently crops into images at an aspect ratio of 3:4. What it effectively does is crop off the sides of a post ever so slightly. So if you're planning on a very specific design, like I am here, you will want to account for this on the first frame. And to set this up is fairly easy. So I'll double click into my parent page spread and focus on the first page. I'll come and select the rectangle frame tool, then simply click once on my canvas area. In the values, I'll type in 1080 for width and 1350 pixels for height to match the canvas area. Click OK and set the color to magenta. Again, I'll select the rectangle frame tool, click once on my canvas area, and this time I'll type in 1012 for width and 1350 for height to match the area of the Instagram wall feed. Click OK and set the color to black. Then with the selection tool, I'll select them both. Up in the control panel, I'll hit the Align Horizontal Center and Align to Vertical Center and place them both in the canvas area on the first page like so. So the black area represents the aspect ratio of the Instagram wall feed and the magenta represents the post feed. With them both selected, I'll come to Window, down to Object and Layout, across to activate the Pathfinder panel. And with them both selected, I'll click on Exclude Overlap. And now we will be left with the side margin. So now I can see the white space which I'll have to design in that will look good on the Instagram wall feed. To finish this step, I'll come over to the Layers panel, I'll double click on the layer and call this Crop. I'll also click to make sure that the Print Layer box is unchecked, click OK, double click back onto a page in the Pages panel, and now we will have the crop margin applied to the first page. As we press W on the keyboard to toggle between normal and preview mode, we will only see the crop area in normal mode. And to finish, I'll hit the lock icon to lock the layer going forward. Nice. So once I have my document set up, I can now start thinking about working with visual elements. Now depending on the nature of a design, this can influence whether you start working with type or image. Looking back at the final design, if I toggle off the visibility of the type, texture and base images layer, we can see that the overall design is structured in what appears to be a stroke-based grid, which is used to compartmentalize the elements. If I toggle back on the base images layer, we can see the variety of image elements across the posts. If I toggle back on the texture layer, we can see additional visual elements, and if I toggle back on the type layer, we can see how those elements work on top. This is a very specific design approach for this particular brand's look and feel. Here I'm going to have to be really careful in order to make sure that this works well on an Instagram post to the right dimension. So for this approach, I'm going to start with the base grid structure and then work my way upwards. To begin, I'll come into my Layers panel, click to add a new layer at the bottom of the Layers panel. Since I'm starting with my stroke layer, I'll call this Stroke Grid and move it to the bottom. Now looking back at the final design, you can see that there's quite a distinct style for this. The modules are contained in a box that runs around the inside of the full canvas area, and the lines that come down fit nicely in the margin space in each page. So back in my document, I'll grab the rectangle tool. I'm just going to start in the top left and I'm going to make sure that I click roughly in the middle of this margin space, between the margin space on the right and the crop area on the left. I'll click and drag down to the bottom right margin on the last page. Upon release, I now have a simple box frame carefully positioned on my page between the margin spaces. I'll just come over to the Tools panel. I'll make sure the stroke is selected, and for now I'll just come and set this to black with a stroke size of 1. And if I press W on the keyboard to toggle between normal and preview mode, we can see my stroke outline there. Now for this grid, I also want some horizontal and vertical lines. So I'll come over and grab the stroke tool from the menu, and I'll just start by clicking and dragging on the first page on the far right down inside the margin space while holding shift to draw a straight line down from top to bottom inside the box frame. Again, I'll make sure the stroke is set to black with a size of 1. Next, I'll make a horizontal stroke. I'll start by clicking and dragging across about 1/3 of the way down while holding shift to draw a straight line from one side of my box to the other to meet my new stroke. Again, I'll make sure the stroke is set to black with a size of 1. For now, I'll leave it like that, and this lays down the base grid and the fundamental structure that I'm going to build on top. So now we've defined some properties for these stroke objects, I'm going to make a quick object style. So first, I'll select one of the strokes. Then I'll jump into the Object Style panel, click on the top right menu, click New Style. I'll name this Base Stroke, click to Apply Style to Selection, and click OK. Then I'll select all the other strokes and apply the Base Stroke object style. So if at any time after creating these strokes I want to change the size or color, all I'll have to do is simply change this one object style and it will change them all automatically. Easy. So next I can start to work with text, which will then define the space and layout where we can finalize how we place the images. Looking back at the final design, we can see that for the first frame on the first carousel post, we have a specific type format. In the previous video, we set up a flyer design. In that episode, we learned how to format the text to create this exact header effect and apply character and paragraph styles. Now, one of the awesome things about setting up character and paragraph styles is that these can be copied and pasted from one document to another. So instead of formatting this from scratch, I'm going to grab a sample we prepared earlier. So I'll come back to the event design document. On the marketing collateral page, with the selection tool, I'll select the flyer thumbnail. Now I'll either come to the links panel and click edit original, or I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and double click on the worksheet thumbnail and the document will open up in its own tab. I'll come and select the header type in the top left. I'll copy this, jump back into my document. I'll come over to the layers panel and create a new layer. I'll call this type. Make sure it's set to the top just under the crop layer. Paste in my text sample and drag it to align to the top left of the inside margin. So right now the type is too small for my document. So with the selection tool, I'll grab the bottom right anchor point of the text box and drag it out. I'll make sure nothing is selected. Come into the paragraph styles panel and double click on the header style in the header and titles folder. This is a style that was just brought in from another document. I'll come to the basic character formatting settings, set the size to 65 and the leading to 70. Click OK and the text will resize. Now if the frame is too small, I might have to click again on the bottom right and drag out until I can see the text in the frame. Keep in mind that all this text is assigned to this one paragraph style here, and the second line is defined by this character style. With the second line selected, if I click none in the character panel, we will see the formatting remove, and if I click back on the header line 2 style, it will return. All this character style is doing is applying the stroke and the all caps effect. The size and leading is defined by the paragraph style. But now I will have to tweak the size of that stroke because it's looking a little small. So with the bottom line selected, I'll come into the stroke panel, set the size to 1, then come over into my character styles panel, right click on the style and click redefine style. So with my text sample in place, I'm now going to change it. To do this, I'll come into the Design Expo content deck. This is a content deck that has been created to help you follow along with all the tutorials in this course to get hold of all the text. If you want to get hold of this content deck, click the link in the description or click the link in the course PDF. So I'll come to the page for the Carousel social media posts, select the top line for post 1, jump back into my InDesign doc, change it, back into the content deck, select line 2, copy, and back in my document, update the text. On this occasion, I'm going to pull the text box right out to allow the text to flow across 4 lines like so, then double click on the bottom middle anchor point to snap the frame to fit the text. Nice. So now I have the header type in a good position. I can now select the stroke layer beneath and drag up to sit comfortably under the type. What I want to aim for here is to get the same amount of space above the type as below, which will now define the image space below. So looking back at the final design, we can see I have this label type with a highlight effect applied. Now we could create this from scratch, or we could recycle from a previous document. In a previous video, we set up a poster design. In that episode, we learned how to format the type to create this exact label and apply the highlight effect. So instead of formatting this from scratch, I'm going to grab a sample we prepared earlier. So I'll come back to the event design document we opened earlier. On the marketing collateral page, with the selection tool, I'll select the poster thumbnail. Now I'll either come to the links panel and click edit original, or I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and double click on the worksheet thumbnail and the document will open up in its own tab. I'll come and select the label type in the top right. I'll copy this, jump back into my document. I'll make sure the type layer is selected. I'll paste and I'll place it below in the module space in the bottom left. Easy. So looking back at the final design, for page 2, I can see that there is just a simple block of text. Now that we have some text in our design, creating this is going to be very straightforward. So back in my document, I'll click to select the header on page 1, press and hold Alt and drag into the next page to make a quick duplicate. On this occasion, I'll press W to enter into normal mode, where I can see my guides and column grids in the background. Here, I'll place my text frame in the center and expand left and right to fit the size of my margin space. And I'll just put my text box roughly in the middle, like so. Next, I'll come into the content deck, select a copy for page 2, back into my document, I'll select all and paste. And what that will do is it will take the formatting from the top line and remove the formatting from the second line. And because I've already created a paragraph style for the header, it will maintain the same font and size. For this page, I want to keep the text consistent, so I won't need to change any of the formatting. Now when working with type in InDesign, you'll want to be careful. So I'll come to type, scroll down and click on show hidden characters. Now hidden characters in Adobe InDesign are non-printing symbols that represent formatting elements in your text, such as spaces, paragraph breaks, tabs and line breaks. These characters are essential for understanding the structure and flow of your text, but are invisible by default when working in a document. Right now, I can see there is a paragraph break at the end of my text. I don't want this, so I'll place my mouse cursor at the end and remove this, and this will clean up my text. I'll also place the mouse cursor in front of this second paragraph and press enter once to add a paragraph break. Next, I'll press escape to deselect, come up to the control panel. Here I'll click to align center vertically. Then I'll right click on the text frame, come into the text frame options. For this frame, I'll come down to inset spacing. And with the lock icon set for all the settings to be the same, I'll set the top to 40 pixels, press shift, and this will apply 40 pixels to the top, bottom, left and right. I'll click OK, and that's my text frame sorted on page 2 for now. So moving on to the next page, again with the selection tool, I'll click on my text frame on page 2 and drag it to the right while holding Alt to make a quick duplicate. And I'll place it on the third page in the center of the frame like so. And I'll use the selection tool to drag the text frame to fit the entire space of the margin. Now on this occasion, I'm going to apply a different type format. So I'll select all the text, come into the paragraph panel, click on basic, and that will strip away the formatting from my text. So now it's back to the default format. I'll come into the content deck, select the text for page 3, copy that, jump back into my document and paste. I'll click into the text and remove the paragraph break from the end to just clean this up. Then I'll select all the text, set the font size to 40. Up in the control panel, I'll hit the Align Center Vertical button, change the font to Base New, hit the drop down in the font family and change this to Wide. Next, I'll select the top number, change the font to Expanded Medium, and push the font up to 100. Then, down in the paragraph panel, I'll set the space after to 25 pixels. With the type selected, I'll come over into the Paragraph Styles panel, click the top right menu and click New Style. I'll name this Number Stat. Make sure to apply style to selection and click OK. Then I'll come and select the next number stat below. Click on the number stat paragraph style to apply it. Click on the bottom number stat and click on the paragraph style to apply it. Next, I'll select the text under the first number stat. Come down to the paragraph panel, set the space after to 80 pixels. Come into the paragraph styles panel, click on the top right menu and click New Style. I'll call this one Title Stat. Click to apply style to selection and click OK. Then select the next title stat below, apply the style, select the last title stat, click to apply the style, And now I have a nice composition of type in this frame with stats nicely formatted, set to some paragraph styles. Easy. So looking back at the final design, on page 4 regarding text, we have the label repeated, a block of text below, and some highlighted text at the base. So back into my document, I'll click on the label on page 1, press and hold Alt and drag over to the last page to make a quick duplicate, and I'll place to align to the top right of the page. I'll click on the header on page 1, press and hold Alt and drag over into the last page to make a quick duplicate, and align it to the left margin. I'll jump back into the content deck, select the text for page 4, jump back into my document, select all and paste to replace. I'll place my mouse cursor at the end of the copy and just delete the paragraph break at the end, and place the mouse cursor before tickets available now, and press enter to add a paragraph break to get some space between. So I'll press escape to deselect the text frame, and I may also have to click back into the text and add a soft return. Next, I'll press and hold Alt and make another copy of the label text down below, jump back into the content deck, select the base text, jump back into my document, select all and paste to replace. I'll press escape to deselect the text. Here I'll drag out the text frame to reveal more of the text. In this instance, I'll place my mouse at the end to remove the paragraph break. And in this instance, I'll control the text dragging. So I'll place my mouse cursor before the word exhilarating. I'll press Shift plus Enter to add a soft return. I'll place my mouse cursor after the word experience. Press Shift plus Enter to add a soft return. I'll press Escape to deselect the text. Double click on the bottom middle anchor point to snap up to fit the text. I'll just position it towards the bottom, and that completes all the main text that will be on each frame. Now, another common feature that works in carousel posts is the folio. Looking back at the final designs, we can see that across the bottom of pages 2 to 4, we have these small pieces of text in the footer. For those who might not be familiar, this is often referred to as the folio. This is just the name given to small elements of text that can exist in the footer of a page set to a small font size. These can exist in carousel posts, much like they would in a print document like a magazine, to remind people of the context of what they are looking at, and it can also be used to help navigate through a carousel post, ultimately adding to a comprehensive user experience. In this instance, on page 2, 3, and 4, in the bottom left, we have the title of the Design Expo event. On the right, we have a little navigation symbol to encourage people to scroll through the carousel post. And on the last page, in the bottom right, we have a web address. So to finish the type for the carousel post, we will add the folio. To make this really easy, I'll come to page 1 and click and drag the label across while holding Alt to make a duplicate. I'll place my text frame in the bottom left of the page. I'll click into the frame to select all the text. I'll come into the Paragraph Styles panel and click on Basic Paragraph. This will remove the formatting and set it back to the default. I'll jump into the content deck, copy the folio text sample 1. Back into my document, I'll select all and paste. I'll be sure to remove the paragraph break at the end. I'll set the font to base new. In the font family dropdown, I'll set this to wide. In the control panel, I'll set the font size to 18. I'll press escape to deselect the text. With the selection tool, I'll carefully pull out the frame. Up in the control panel, I'll click to align the text to the bottom of the frame and place my text neatly in the bottom left, like so. And double click on the top middle anchor to snap the frame to fit the text. So now I've created a new text format. With the text selected, I'll come over to the Paragraph Styles panel, click the top right menu, click New Style, I'll call this style Folio, click to apply style to selection and click OK. Next, I'll click and drag my folio element right while holding Alt plus Shift to drag across in a straight line. And I'll place this one in the bottom left on page 3. I'll do the same again, press and hold Alt plus Shift and drag across to make a duplicate and place in the bottom left of page 4. And I'll do this one last time to place one in the bottom right corner of page 4. I'll jump into the content deck, copy the folio text sample 2, back into my document, I'll select all and paste. I'll be sure to remove the paragraph break at the end and pull out the frame to fit the text. I'll double click into the text frame to select all, and up in the control panel, I'll click to align to the right. I'll click escape to deselect my text, carefully position my base text on page 4 on top of the folio element to place it comfortably. And that now completes all the text elements in my first carousel post example. Nice. So now I have all the text in my carousel post, I can start to work with images. Looking back at my final posts, for post 1, on page 1, I have a logo mark in the top right, a collage composition in the module space below. In the bottom right, we have a little navigation symbol. Across page 2 and 3, there is a seamless image in the background. And on the last page, there is the logo in the top left and a stroke element below this. So to begin, I'll start with the logo mark symbol. And to make this easy, I'll jump into the brand toolkit. So with the download folder open, click into folder 4 project, into the Design Expo folder, click into folder 1 Media Kit, and open the Design Expo Brand Kit InDesign file. This is a brand kit document that includes all the style references we are going to include in our publication design. If we scroll to the logo page, we can see a sample of the logo mark. So I'll click to select this, copy, and back into the document. I'll first come over to the layers panel, create a new layer and call this base images. And I'll make sure to place this layer at the bottom. I'll paste the logo into the document, place it at the top right of the margin on page 1. And because it's a vector group, I'll place my mouse cursor in the bottom left and click and drag while holding shift and scale the logo to fit 2.5 rows on the baseline grid. Easy. So next I'm going to place the image into the module space below. Looking back at the final design, the image for this page will be one of the collage compositions we created earlier in the course. Back into the brand toolkit, if we scroll down to the brand artwork style page, we can see we have links to collage samples. With the selection tool, I'll select the collage thumbnail. Now I'll either come to the links panel and click Edit Original, or I'll hold Alt on the keyboard and double click on the worksheet thumbnail and the document will open up in its own tab. Here we have a series of collage samples we worked on in a previous episode. If you have not watched that episode and you're curious to learn how to create digital collages like these, you can jump back to the previous video. Or if not, you can just open this document from the download folder where you can follow along. For the first post design, I'm going to use the first collage composition. Now over in the layers panel, I've organized this document into separate layers to make it easy to work with. In this instance, I'm taking everything but the type. So in the layers panel, I'll toggle the visibility of the type layer off, and now I can just see the visual elements. With the selection tool, I'll click and drag over the elements, copy these, come into my social post design, make sure I'm on the base images layer and paste. So when pasting in, you may see the elements appear a little desaturated. If we come up to edit, scroll down, click on transparency blend space. If we set this to RGB, we will now see the image colors as intended. Now I'll take a few minutes to reposition the elements inside the module space like so, until I have something that looks like this. So the next image element on this page is a small navigation symbol placed in the bottom right of the page. As mentioned earlier, a common feature on a carousel post is a folio element, which can help encourage people to scroll through the post. Unlike static social media, which only consists of one frame, a carousel post will consist of multiple. So it can help to give users a visual cue to entice them to scroll through a carousel post. So back into the brand kit document, I'll scroll down to the icons and stroke page, and here I have some samples of some navigation icons. I'll select the bottom right icon, jump back into the document, paste in the icon, place it in the bottom right, press S to activate the scale tool, and click and drag while holding shift to scale down and fit to the height of 2 rows in my baseline grid. With my first navigation symbol placed, with the selection tool, I click and drag right while holding Alt plus Shift and release on the far right side of page 2 to make a duplicate. And I'll do this once again to place on page 3, and now I have 3 symbols in the bottom right on the first 3 pages. So looking back at the final design, the next image is a gradient map image which covers across pages 2 and 3 seamlessly. So with the base images layer selected, I'll come into the tools panel and grab the rectangle tool, and I'll just drag from the top left on page 2 between the margin space and drag down to the bottom right in the middle of the margin space on page 3. Into the frame, I'm going to place an image. So back into the toolkit, if we scroll to the image treatment page, we can see a variety of image samples with particular color treatments applied. For the first social media post, we are going to use one of these gradient map samples. Now I could either place the image manually into my social media post or copy and paste a sample from this document. So here's a quick tip. I'll select the image sample from the brand toolkit. I'll copy and jump back into my social media post. To make it easy, I'll first lock the type and stroke grid layer and paste the image onto the base image layer. With the direct selection tool, we can click to select the image inside the frame. I'll copy the image by pressing Command+C on Mac or Control+C on PC. Then I'll press Escape. I'll select the image frame and delete. I'll select the new frame that I want the image to go inside. I'll come up to Edit, select Paste Into, and the image will appear in the frame. Next, I'll right-click on the frame, down to Fitting, and I'll select Fill Frame Proportionally. And that is a really useful technique for getting images from one frame into another. But if you don't have a situation like this, where you're sampling images from other documents, you can just place the image in manually. So I'll click into the image with the Direct Selection tool and delete the image. With the rectangle selected, I'll press Command-D on Mac or Control-D on PC to place an image. I'll navigate into the Download folder, into Folder 4, Project, into the Design Expo folder, click into Folder 1, Media Kit, into the Assets folder, into the Image Treatment folder, into the Gradient Map folder, and open the Design Expo GM Event 003 PSD, and the image will be placed inside. With the Direct Selection tool, I can click on the image in the frame, and here we can see the bounding box representing the image inside the frame. I'll click on the middle right anchor, and while holding Shift plus Alt, I'll click and drag to scale the image down or up to fit within the frame. Easy. So next I need to add the logo onto the last page, and I'll place this in the top left. So back into the toolkit, if we scroll to the Brand at a Glance page, here we can see a sample of the full logo. So I'll click this and copy, then back into my document, I'll paste and place it in the top left and make sure it fits the height of 4 rows in my baseline grid. Now, if the image appears slightly pixelated, we can come up to View, down to Display, and hit High Quality Display. So back into the brand kit, I'll select one of the stroke examples, back into my document, paste and scale across to fit the width of my margin and position comfortably under the logo above. Lastly, with the stroke layer unlocked, with the selection tool, I'll click on the right stroke on page 1, click and drag while holding Alt plus Shift to duplicate across in a straight line, position on the left side in between the margin space, and that now completes all the visual elements in my first carousel post. Nice. So once I have all my text and images in the document, I then like to start thinking about working with color. So now if we look in the swatches panel, we can see that we have some of the brand colors copied over from some of the elements that we pasted into the document earlier. But to continue on, I'm going to need all the colors. Now back into the brand toolkit doc, I could copy and paste the colors from the Brand at a Glance page, but to make it even easier, you can import a color swatch. So back to the document, come up to the top of the swatches panel, click the menu and come down and click on Load Swatches. Upon click, you will see a window appear. I'll navigate to the Download folder, click into Folder 4 Project, into the Design Expo folder, click into Folder 1 Media Kit, into the Assets folder, into Folder 5 Color, and click to open the Design Expo palette document. Upon click, we will now see the colors present in our swatches panel in a folder. But now we will need to be careful. Right now we have lots of duplicates, which can happen when you paste in elements with the same color multiple times. Here I'll come and select on the duplicates, right click, select delete and replace them with the new colors. And I may need to quickly rename some of the swatches to clean this up here. So now I could come and select the text elements and the stroke elements and change the colors individually, but now I've created some styles, it'll be easier to change the colors there. So I'll come into the paragraph styles panel, and starting from the top, I'll work my way down, clicking into each style and change the text color to midnight. Once done, I'll press W to enter into preview mode and we can see the type has changed. Next, I'll come into the Object Styles panel, double click on the base stroke style and change the stroke color to Ultravio. Next, I'll come over and click on the text frame on page 2. In the Tools panel, I'll make sure the stroke is selected. I'll set this to white with a stroke size of 2, and I may have to expand this out a little to fit the page perfectly. So for the last frame, I want to add a little bit of color to the second line so the whole block of text isn't just one monotonous color. I'm only changing the color, so here I can create a character style. So I'll select the second paragraph and change the color to Ultravio. I'll come over into the Character Styles panel, hit the top menu, come down to New Style. I'll call this T-Ultravio. Make sure to apply style to selection and click OK. So the paragraph style will define the type format and the character style will simply change the color. With the text selected, in the Character Styles panel, if I click back on None, the text will revert back to midnight. And if I click back on the character style, it will change the color. So with that last color change, that now completes the first social media post. Awesome. So once you're happy with one layout, it's very easy to duplicate and make modifications. This is the true power of InDesign. So before we move on and see how easy it is to make additional posts, I first have to deal with repetitive elements. If we look back at the final design, we can see that for our 4 posts, we have a consistent grid, type, and logo structure. So to help manage repetitive elements, I'm going to use parent pages. So right now in the Pages panel, if we look at the top, we have one parent page with prefix A, which is currently applied to each page below. I'll toggle the visibility of every layer off, but the grid and crop layer. I'll unlock the grid layer, select all the stroke lines. I'll press Command plus X on Mac or Control plus X on PC to cut. I'll come up and double click on parent page A and press Command plus Shift plus V on Mac or Control plus Shift plus V on PC to paste in place. And if I double click on page 1 in the Pages panel, we will see that the strokes are now back. Next, I'll toggle the visibility of the stroke grid off and toggle on the visibility of the type layer. So now I'll select some of the type elements that will be repetitive. So while holding Shift, I'll select the title on page 1, the label on page 1 and 4, the title and base text on page 4, and the folio elements at the bottom. I'll press Command plus X on Mac or Control plus X on PC to cut. I'll come up and double click on parent page A, make sure I'm on the type layer, and press Command plus Shift plus V on Mac or Control plus Shift plus V on PC to paste in place. And if I double click on page 1 in the Pages panel, we can see that the text is present. Next, I'll toggle the visibility of the text layer off and toggle the visibility of the base layer on. While holding Shift, I'll select the logo mark on page 1, the nav icons on page 1, 2, and 3, the logo on page 4, and the stroke. I'll press Command plus X on Mac or Control plus X on PC to cut. Double click on parent page A and press Command plus Shift plus V on Mac or Control plus Shift plus V on PC to paste in place. Double click on page 1 in the Pages panel, toggle back the visibility of all the layers, and everything is looking good. However, right now we can't see the nav buttons on page 2 and 3. This is because the image on that layer might be on top of the nav buttons. So to resolve this, I'll double click back on the parent page spread. While holding Shift, I'll click on the 3 nav buttons at the bottom. I'll press Command plus X on Mac or Control plus X on PC to cut. This time I'll come over to the Layers panel and click on the type layer above and press Command plus Shift plus V on Mac or Control plus Shift plus V on PC to paste in place. And now I know that whatever image I place on the base image layer, these nav buttons will always appear on top. So if I double click back onto my first page in the Pages panel, everything is back in place and we have our essential elements on the parent page. Excellent. So now we have our first post completed and our repetitive elements set on the parent page, we can now look to create additional posts. So looking back at the final design, we can see that for post 2, we have a slightly different approach. This time, instead of using a collage image for the first page, we have a photo image with some texture on top. For page 2 and 3, we don't have a seamless background image, rather another collage comp on page 3. And for the back page, it's the same layout, but with different copy. So I'll come to the Pages panel, press and hold Shift, click on page 1, then click on page 4, right click and duplicate spread. And with the selection tool, I can quickly come to page 1 and remove the image element. I can click on the background image on page 2 and 3 and delete that. And I can also come and click the text box on page 3, delete that, and just like that, I have a clean template ready to add new content to. Pretty fast, right? So I'll jump back into the content deck and select the headline for page 1. Now in this instance, we have a different approach to the first carousel post. For the second carousel post, I just want the standard title format and not the second line. Now currently, this text element is uneditable because it currently resides on a parent page. So with the selection tool, I'll press and hold Command plus Shift on Mac or Control plus Shift on PC and simply click the text frame. This will then override the page element and the box will now become editable. I'll double click into the text frame, select all and paste to replace the text, and I'll be sure to remove the paragraph break at the end of the type. Nice. So looking back at the final design for the second post, this time instead of the collage composition, this post will include a full color image that fills the module space below. Looking in the Brand Toolkit document, if I scroll down to the photo section, for this post I'm going to use one of the images from the People collection. Back into my document. To make this easy, I'll make sure all the layers are locked apart from the base image layer. Click and drag a frame to fill the space below, and press Command+D on Mac or Control+D on PC to place in an image. I'll navigate into the download folder, into folder 4 project, into the design expo folder, click into folder 1 media kit, into the assets folder, into the photography folder, into the people folder, and open the design expo interaction 002 JPEG. And the image will be placed inside. With the direct selection tool, I'll click into the image and move it around in that space and scale to position like so. Easy. Now looking back at the final design, we can see that on top of the image layer, I'm also using some texture samples from the brand toolkit as part of the visual brand aesthetic. So again, I'll jump into the brand toolkit and scroll to the texture sample page. Here I'll grab the square grid sample on the document over on the left, copy, and back into my document, I'll come and create a new layer. I'll name this texture, make sure it's placed just above the grid layer, paste in the texture, place my mouse cursor on the bottom right and drag while holding shift to scale up and position like so on top of the background image. And in this instance, I'll click to select the fill color and set it to white. Back into the toolkit dock, I'll select another sample, paste it into my document, scale down, and on this occasion, I'll change the fill color to fluoro. So back into my content deck, I can select the copy for page 2. I'll select all the text and paste to replace, and I'll be sure to remove the paragraph break at the end of the type. On this occasion, I'll then place my mouse cursor in front of the second paragraph and press enter to add a hard return to put some space between. Now on this occasion, I want to add a little bit of color to the second paragraph, so the whole block of text isn't just one monotonous color. So with the second paragraph selected, I'll come into the character styles and apply the El Travio style. Nice. So for the third page of the second carousel post, here I'm featuring another collage composition with a profile image with some text next to it. So I'll come to page 1 in the first carousel post and drag the elements down while holding Alt to duplicate. I'll press A to activate the direct selection tool, click to select the grayscale hand image, then press Command+D on Mac or Control+D on Mac to place an image. I'll navigate into the download folder, into folder 4 project, into the design expo folder, click into folder 1 media kit, into the assets folder, into the image treatment folder, into the grayscale folder, into the people folder, into the portraits folder, and open the Kathy Manson PSD. And the image will be replaced. Now for this unique instance, I'm going to place the profile image over on the left, and this is going to cover the folio image in the bottom left. So for this example, I'm going to remove that folio element, again while holding Command+Shift on Mac or Control+Shift on PC. I'll click that element to override the parent page object, and I'll just delete that. So looking back at the final design, to the right of the profile image, I have this text formatting with the name. In a previous video, we set up collage compositions. In that episode, we learned how to format the text to create this exact header effect. So instead of formatting this from scratch, I'm going to grab a sample we prepared earlier. So I'll come back to the collage document. This time I'll toggle off the visibility of every layer apart from the type. I'll grab a sample of text, copy, come back into my document, make sure I have the text layer selected, and I'll paste this in. First, I'll double click into the text and change graphic to Kathy and design to Manson. And with it selected, I'll click into the tools panel, and with the stroke color selected, I'll change this to El Travio. I'll press escape to deselect the type and place the text block in the top right. Press S to activate the scale tool, make sure the reference point is set to the top right, and click and drag while holding shift in the bottom left corner to scale up a little like so. And then I'll just tidy up the collage composition to the left until I have something like this. So to finish off this page, I'm just going to add a little bit of text down in the bottom right. I'll jump back into the content deck and select the copy block. Back into my document, I'll grab the text tool, come down and draw a text box. Paste in my text. If the text appears large because there is a paragraph style applied to it, I'll just jump into the paragraph styles panel and click basic to set this back to default. I'll set the font to base new, hit the drop down and click wide medium. I'll set the font to size 22, the leading to 32, set the color to midnight. I'll be sure to turn off hyphenation, remove the paragraph break at the end of the type. I'll press escape to deselect the text and just reposition my text frame in that space until it feels comfortable. To finish off, I'll double click into my parent page, select and copy the stroke sample from page 4, double click back onto page 3, paste, and scale down and position on top of the text like so. Easy. So now it's just a case of replacing the text on the back page. So I'll jump back into the content deck, select the title text for page 4 on the second carousel, back into my document, double click into the frame, select all and paste, and I might have to expand the type frame just to show all the text. On this occasion I want to add some space, so I'll place my mouse cursor before the word tickets, press enter to add a hard return. I'll select the words tickets available now and come into the character styles panel and click to apply the Ultravio style. Back into the content deck, I'll select the base text for page 4, back into my document, double click into the frame, select all and paste. I'll click into the text and add some soft returns just to improve the appearance of the text ragging. And just like that, we've created another carousel post. So it may have taken us a little bit of time to set up the first carousel post above, but once that was done and we set up all the repetitive elements in the parent page, creating another one was really quick. Now looking back at the finished designs, we can see that for our carousel posts, we have some variety with the color on the base text and also the labels on the cover page. Now to do this is really easy. So right now, this label formatting is being defined by a paragraph style, but in this case, we only want to change the highlight color. So in this instance, it would be wise to use a character style. So I'll come and select the text in the label. Down in the character panel, I'll click the top right menu and click on underline options. In this instance, I'll change the highlight to Lumo and set the tint to 20% and click OK. Next, I'll come into the character styles panel and hit the top right menu and click new style. I'll name this Lumo. Now in general, I'll make sure that based on is set to none. Make sure to apply style to selection and click OK. Now in the character styles panel, I have an option to simply change the color of the highlight effect. For example, with the text selected, I'll come and click on none. The highlight effect will go back to the default as set by the paragraph style. And if I click back on the Lumo character style, it will set it back to the new color. Lastly, I'll click the label on the first page, select the type and click on the Lumo character style. Nice. So let's set up another carousel post. I'll come up to the Pages panel, press and hold Shift, click on page 5, then click on page 8, right click and duplicate spread. And with the selection tool, I can quickly come to page 1 and remove the elements I don't need. And just like that, I have a clean template ready to go to add new content to. So looking back at the file designs, we can see that for post 3, we have a similar approach to post 2. However, this time, instead of using a full color image for the front, we have a gradient map image. And for pages 2 and 3, this time we have more type and image elements. So I'll jump back into the content deck, select the headline for page 1 for post 3, I'll select all and paste, and I'll be sure to remove the paragraph break at the end of the type. In this instance, I'll fine tune the text ragging, adding soft returns to get the type across 4 lines like so. Now for the third post, instead of the full color image, I'm going to use a gradient map image. With the image frame selected, I'll press Command plus D on Mac or Control plus D on PC to place in the image. I'll navigate to the download folder, click into folder 4 project, into the Design Expo folder, click into folder 1 Media Kit, into the Assets folder, into the Image Treatment folder, into the Gradient Map folder, and open the Design Expo GM Building 001 PSD. And the image will be replaced. With the direct selection tool, I'll click into the image and move it around in the space and scale to position like so. And in this instance, I'll select the white square texture on top and set the fill color to midnight. So looking back at the file design, we can see that for page 2 and 3, we have some type frames with image frames. So to begin, I'll start with the image. I'll come over to the frame tool, click and hold to select the ellipse tool, click and drag a frame in the first column while holding Shift, and draw an ellipse to fit the first column on the left. With the image frame selected, I'll press Command D on Mac or Control D on PC to place in an image. I'll navigate to the download folder, click into folder 4 project, into the Design Expo folder, click into folder 1 Media Kit, into the Assets folder, into the Image Treatment folder, into the Grayscale folder, into the Photography folder, and open the Design Expo GS Attendees 001 PSD, and the image will be placed inside. With the direct selection tool, I'll click into the image and move it around in that space and scale to position like so. Next, I'll come over to the Tools panel and click the Text tool. Make sure I'm on the type layer. And in the right column, I'll click and drag to draw a text box to fill the column width. And I'll make the height about the same size as the image to the left. I'll jump into the content deck, select the headline for page 2 for post 3. Back into the doc, I'll paste it into the frame. And if the text seems large, I'll come into the paragraph styles panel and click basic to reset the text back to default. I'll be sure to remove the paragraph break at the end of the type. And with all the types selected, I'll set the size to 42, the leading to 50. I'll set the font to base new. Click the drop down and set this to expanded medium. I'll set the fill color to midnight. In the control panel, I'll click to remove any hyphenation. I'll press escape to deselect the text. And up in the control panel, I'll click to align the text to center vertically in the frame. So next I want to put some space between the image and the text. I'll right click on the text frame, come to text frame options, and I'll add a 50 pixel inset space to the left hand side and click OK. Next, I'll click and drag the circle image down while holding Alt to make a duplicate down below the text in the second column. And I'll duplicate the text above, down while holding Alt to make a duplicate. And I'll place my text and new image below like so. I'll press A to activate the direct selection tool and click into my new image on the right. I'll press Command plus D on Mac or Control plus D on PC to place in an image. I'll navigate into the download folder, into folder 4 project, into the Design Expo folder, click into folder 1 Media Kit, into the Assets folder, into the Image Treatment folder, into the Grayscale folder, into the Photography folder, and open the Design Expo GS Attendees 002 PSD, and the image will be replaced. With the direct selection tool, I'll click into the image and move it around in that space and scale to position. Next, I'll jump back into the content deck, select the headline and body copy for the next piece of type. Back into the doc, I'll select all, come into the paragraph styles panel and click basic to set the type back to default. I'll paste in the text to replace and remove the paragraph break at the end of the type. So with all the types selected, I'll set the size to 26, the leading to 34. I'll set the font to base new, click the drop down and set this to wide. I'll set the fill color to midnight. In the control panel, I'll click to remove any hyphenation. I'll press escape to deselect the type. So right now, all this text is just the same format. What I want to do now is get the title to be the same as the text above. So I'll double click into my text frame and select Pushing Boundaries. I'll come over to the Tools panel and select the eyedropper tool. And I'll come over and click the text above, and that will clone the font size and the formatting. I'll place my mouse cursor at the end and press enter for a hard return, and I'll press escape to deselect the text. So right now we have the large inset space on the left and the text on the right is too close to the image. So with the frame selected, I'll right click and select text frame options. I'll change the left inset space from 50 to 25, click OK. Then I'll come down to the paragraph panel and add a right indent of 20 pixels, and I'll edit my text with soft returns to balance out the text inside the frame there. Nice. To finish off this comp, with the selection tool, I'll click the first circle image, press and hold shift and select the next circle image. Come into the tools menu, click on the stroke color. I'll set the color to Solario, set the stroke size to 10, and click to set the stroke to outside. I'll click off to deselect, select the second circle, apply the stroke color to fluoro, and then reposition the elements in that space to balance them out. So with my elements on page 2, with the selection tool, I'll click and drag over them all, and while holding Alt plus Shift, I'll click and drag to the right to duplicate the elements onto the next page. I'll select both circles while holding Shift, come up to Object, down to Convert Shape, and click Rectangle. I'll jump into the content deck, select the headline for page 3 for post 3, back into the doc, I'll paste into the new frame. I'll be sure to remove the paragraph break at the end of the type. Back into the content deck, select the title, back into the doc, I'll paste into the new frame. Back into the content deck, select the body copy, back into the doc, I'll paste into the new frame. I'll be sure to remove the paragraph break at the end of the type, and that's the type in the next frames. So I'll press A to activate the direct selection tool, click into the first image, press Command D on Mac or Control D on PC to place an image. I'll navigate into the download folder, into folder 4 project, into the Design Expo folder, click into folder 1 Media Kit, into the Assets folder, into the Image Treatment folder, into the grayscale folder, into the photography folder, and open the Design Expo GS Event 002 PSD. With the direct selection tool, I'll click into the image and move it around in that space and scale to position like so. I'll click into the next image, press Command plus D on Mac or Control plus D on PC to place in an image. I'll navigate into the download folder, into folder 4, into the Design Expo folder, click into folder 1 Media Kit, into the Assets folder, into the Image Treatment folder, into the Grayscale folder, into the Photography folder, and open the Design Expo GS Workshop 001 PSD. And with the direct selection tool, I'll click into the image and move it around in that space and scale to position like so. I'll click the top image, set the stroke color to Ultravio. I'll click the bottom image, set the stroke color to Lumo. And now I have all the elements set out for those two pages. So now it's just a case of replacing the text on the back page. I'll jump back into the content deck, select the title text for page 4 on the third carousel, back into my document, double click into the frame, select all and paste. I'll add the paragraph space and apply the Ultravio character style to the Tickets Available Now text. Back into the content deck, select the base text for page 4, back into my document, double click into the frame, select all and paste. Now looking back at the finished design for post 3, we have a different color for the base text. I'll come and select the text in the label. Down in the character panel, I'll click on the top right menu and click on underline options. In this instance, I'll change the highlight to Ultravio and set the tint to 20%. Click OK. Next, I'll come into the character styles panel and hit the top right menu and click new style. I'll name this Ultravio. Down in general, I'll make sure that based on is set to none. Make sure to apply style to selection and click OK, and that's our third post complete. So using the same technique as I just demonstrated, you could now continue to duplicate as many posts as you like and continue to edit content and change up the messaging. Looking back at my final design for post 4, I used the same approach as the previous posts, but changed page 2 and 3 to include mugshots of some of the guest speakers. So before we close off this tutorial, there is one last thing that is quite important to keep in mind, and that is style management. In this video, we created various styles and we also pasted in some styles from our documents. If we look in the paragraph styles panel, right now we can see a bunch and some folders. Now we could leave it as is and move on, but if we want to be really organized, we can manage these styles. This can make the whole process and workflow of using InDesign and styles easier. What we're going to do now is just manage these and clean it all up. First, in the paragraph styles panel, I'll drag the title state style we made earlier into the header and titles folder, order from top to bottom like so. I'll click to add a new folder, name this paragraph, and drag in the number stat and the folio style. And I'll arrange my folders like so the headers and titles is at the top and the label folder is at the bottom. Into the character styles panel, I'll create a new folder. I'll call this label colors, make sure it's set to the bottom and drag in the label color styles. I'll create another folder and call this text colors, make sure it's set to the bottom and drag in my text color styles. Into the object styles panel, I'll create a folder called strokes, drag in my stroke style, and here we're creating a clear and organized hierarchy of our styles. Nice. So once you're happy with your design, we can now look to export these out. First, I just want to export the first carousel post. So when you're ready, simply come up to File and click on Export, or press Command plus E on Mac or Control plus E on PC. I'll navigate to a project folder I saved previously in the course, click into the Publish folder, select the JPEG folder. I'll create a new folder called Carousel and create a new folder called cpost1. Now I'll set the naming convention to DE_C1_, and down in the format I'll choose JPEG. Now this is really important. I'll click Save and up will pop another menu. Here I'm going to set the range to 1-4. I'll make sure Pages is selected. For quality, I'll set this to maximum. I'll set the resolution to 150 just to get some really nice quality files, but you could also set this to 72. I'll set the color space to RGB and then click Export. I'll navigate to my course folder, look in the Publish folder in the JPEGs folder, and I will now see 4 separate JPEG images. Setting the name conventions to DE_C1_ has allowed the numbering to follow suit. Since we exported 4 separate files, we can now see that the additional files are now DE_C1_1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we can preview these and we can see they are single image files that can be used to upload to social media. If uploaded in the right order, this will now create a seamless social media carousel post. So back into the document, next I want to export the second carousel post. I'll press Command E on Mac or Control E on PC. I'll navigate back to my project folder, click into the Publish folder, select the JPEG folder. Here I'll create a new folder and call this C Post 2. I'll set the naming conventions to DE_C2_, and down in the format, I'll choose JPEG. I'll click Save and up will pop another menu. This time I'll set the range to 5-8, click Export, and in the New Post folder, we can see 4 new JPEG images. Again, we can preview these and we can see they are single image files that can be used to upload to social media. If uploaded in the right order, this will now create another seamless social media carousel post. Perfect. So that's how you can create seamless carousel posts in InDesign and export them ready to upload to social media platforms. Now, up to this point, we have been looking at the sort of design one might create to promote and market an event. Now it's time to have a look at some of the design one may want to create for an event itself. Now, a common document used at an event is a map. This kind of document will need to be practical, to be carried, but also present lots of information. At an event, a map can often be presented as a trifold pamphlet, where it can be folded down and placed in the pocket and then opened up to view more clearly. This type of document can be referred to as a pamphlet. So in the next video, we are going to look at how to create a more complex document for print in InDesign. So see you in the next video.